Today, I'm joined by Colonel David Maxwell and Professor Eric French. Colonel David Maxwell currently serves as Vice President of Center for Asia-Pacific Strategy. He was a planner for the United Nations Command and the ROK U.S. Combined Forces Command. Professor Eric French is an assistant professor of international studies at the State University of New York at Brockport, and affiliated scholar with the America in the World Consortium. Thank you for both for your time today. So South Korea has for decades been debating whether it should adopt a nuclear-powered attack submarine. China has been boosting anti-access area denial capabilities, which threaten the regional stability in the Indo-Pacific region. And in this context, how important is it for South Korea to potentially possess a nuclear-powered submarine?
Obviously, South Korea's first, second, and third priority, especially today, is dealing with North Korea. But it can't ignore the broader regional situation either. The overall balance of power in the Indo-Pacific is very, very important to South Korea. So conflicts in the South China Sea or Taiwan, they might not directly impact South Korea's security tomorrow, but a victory for China in a contingency, right, in either area could dramatically reshape the regional balance of power. It would result in a stronger, emboldened China and maybe a weaker or more reluctant United States. And that would be a very bad situation from South Korea's perspective. So South Korea's ability to chip in or credibly threaten to chip in to a contingency like that can contribute to deterring Chinese aggression. And a blue water navy, including SSNs, can help out with that because, of course, nuclear submarines offer clear advantages over diesel electric subs as a tool in a blue water navy. And so ultimately, it's just a better capability for projecting power. And so in that sense, I do think there is a rationale to have an SSN if you're concerned about the broader Indo-Pacific region.
Colonel, is the cost greater than the benefit of having nuclear-powered submarines for South Korea? Is it better for them to invest that money to some other defense capabilities?
I always like to emphasize what is in the country's interest, U.S. interests, South Korean interests, and I think we often get caught up in trying to, develop support for the U.S. interests, but I think it's in South Korea's own interest. Now, getting to the cost, I think you really have to weigh the cost benefit. Certainly, a nuclear-powered submarine is costly, and we have a saying in the military: it takes three to make one. So, if you want to keep one deployed, you need at least two more, and technically, it'd be better to have probably about at least six to make two. And to keep them underway, to have any kind of positive effect. But it also goes to the question of what is the concept of employment? How does South Korea intend to use it? And is a nuclear-powered submarine really the best choice for South Korea? When you weigh those costs and benefits, are there other platforms that South Korea could or should invest in that might give more bang for the buck, so to speak? And so I think that's a fair question.
Could you compare the capabilities, speed, or range of nuclear submarines compared to those of diesel electric submarines? And why is having a nuclear-powered submarine advantage for South Korea's defense strategy?
Nuclear subs, just generally speaking, they're powered by a powerful onboard nuclear reactor, whereas diesel electric subs run on have higher endurance, meaning they can remain submerged for a much longer period of time. Effectively, as long as they have food, they can remain at sea, underwater, submerged, much longer than a diesel electric sub or even a more advanced air-independent propulsion system sub. SSNs can maintain high speeds, right, over 30 knots while submerged, and they can do that for longer. They can travel faster than diesel electrics. They can maintain that speed while underwater. If a diesel electric moves quickly, like it's evading or engaging in combat, it's going to run out of its charge pretty quickly, and it's going to need to snorkel. And so SSNs have that advantage. And so really, at the end of the day, it's a more capable asset, and it's one that can more quickly move farther from South Korea in the event of a contingency elsewhere.
Colonel, South Korea is already considered to have advanced anti-submarine war capabilities. Can South Korea effectively counter North Korean submarine threats with this existing capabilities and without nuclear submarines?
Well, certainly it has advanced capabilities, and certainly the alliance together brings tremendous capabilities to defend against the North Korean threat. But and I do think more investment in other types, P-8 aircraft, the anti-submarine capabilities of surface ships are a good investment. One of the things I do want to mention is that I get concerned that there's some in Korea that maybe not in the defense establishment, but in the political side, that look at this as a way of keeping up with North Korea. And we should remember that South Korea is a peaceful nuclear power by choice. It has the nuclear technology, the nuclear capabilities to do this, whereas North Korea has not proven that. Even though they have developed nuclear weapons, South Korea exports nuclear power, has 24 nuclear power plants in its country. The decision to develop nuclear subs has to be based on all the factors that we've been discussing. But I don't think it should be based on trying to just keep up with North Korea.
Professor French, will the United States support this idea of South Korea having a nuclear-powered submarine? From the U.S. perspective, will they believe this will contribute to strengthening the U.S.-RK alliance, especially when the tensions are already high in the region?
So at this point, so far, when South Korea has discussed this with the United States, so far the answer has been kind of no, like that the United States is not currently interested in strongly backing a nuclear-powered submarine for South Korea. The issue is we have this 1-2-3 agreement with the South Koreans, providing them with uranium, right, and providing them with nuclear fuel. And right now, any uranium we provide to them cannot be used for military purposes. They can't enrich U.S. uranium for military purposes. They can't use U.S. enriched uranium for military purposes. And fueling a nuclear sub is a military purpose. And so this is kind of a headache to deal with at the moment. And so far, the United States has not indicated an interest in revising that agreement to provide South Korea with that fuel. And there's a couple of reasons why the U.S. has. Again, I'm not in the U.S. government, so I can't tell you definitively the logic, but you do hear from the American side concern about non-proliferation. The key thing stopping South Korea from acquiring a nuclear weapon is that so far, South Korea thinks the costs outweigh the benefits. And I don't see how enriching nuclear fuel for an SSN fundamentally changes that calculus for Seoul. Instead, what ends up happening, unfortunately, is South Korea asks us for support, and we say no. Effectively, we don't really trust you with this, right? Or at least that's how it looks, even if that's not the intention, especially now that we are providing more support for the Australians. And I think that's a bad look at the end of the day for alliance cohesion. And so I think at the end of the day, it's up to South Korea. And if they choose to go this path, the United States should provide them for support.
Colonel, will South Korea developing nuclear-powered submarines affect regional stability, diplomacy, and neighboring countries, especially with China and Japan?
Well, yes, and I think, and this goes back to the proliferation issue, we're not so concerned about South Korea developing nuclear power and possibly nuclear weapons to proliferate, to send them, but it is the example of South Korea developing nuclear capabilities that could cause the development of nuclear capabilities by other countries. And so I think that's really the proliferation aspect. There is, of course, the concern. And when South Korea did develop its own covert nuclear program in the 70s, why did they do that? Fear of being left out by the United States, the fear of U.S. withdrawal of troops. And so that really should be a lesson for us on how important it is to maintain a credible alliance and a commitment that is unwavering. And to maintain South Korean confidence in our commitment. But I don't think that there's any concern about South Korea getting nuclear power, developing nuclear weapons, and then proliferating them as North Korea might, and really has done with Iraq, with Syria, and probably with Iran as well, most likely with Iran. So that fear is not one I think we're concerned about. And in terms of regional power, I think any growth of like-minded democracies, military capabilities, alliance capabilities, U.S., Japan, South Korea, will be considered a negative development from China's perspective. And so they don't want any growth in military capabilities in any of the surrounding areas, because that it can be perceived as a threat, particularly as they look at Taiwan and possible military action in the South China Sea. So they would look very unfavorably at this. But that should not be a concern and should not deter a national security requirement by South Korea or by the ROK-US alliance. South Korea wants a nuclear sub. It cannot be perceived as a vanity project.
Yeah.
It's got to be for real strategic rationale, and South Korea has to make that strong case.
Well, that's all for today. Professor French and Colonel Maxwell, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see you.